do have, and that's what they had to do sort of last spring to kind of preserve guys and try to prevent injuries, perhaps.
Yeah, but not for that reason. I think you can get a lot of work done without going full contact. To be honest with you, I told you guys this before, we had a lot of similar challenges and issues at our last institution. I think I mentioned to you guys, we had 7 guys playing in that conference that never played high school football before on that team. So we had some real challenges from a numbers perspective. Now there, it was overall numbers, not scholarship numbers. So we're going to have to be creative, but I think we can get a lot of work done with what we call tag off, which tag off is basically two-hand touch, but you're doing it in an athletic position. You got to be able to legitimately, when you watch the tape, be able to say that guy would have made the tackle. He was in an athletic position. He was down in a football position, bent down, good bend in his ankles, knees, and hips, and was able to tag off, palms up with 2 hands on the ball carrier. If not, they're going to run. They're going to keep running to the ball carrier until they're able to do that. So I think you can get a lot of work done if you do it the right way, and you demand the fundamentals and the technique in an athletic position. So we'll do it, but it's not necessarily from an injury prevention standpoint. That's part of it, because I also believe that during spring ball is a great time to develop toughness as well. Because sometimes it's hard to do that during the season, because if you do get some tweaks or some pulls or some issues during the season, it's going to affect you on game day. And right now, everybody wants to talk about the blue and white game. We're not trying to win the blue and white game. We're trying to win today's practice. And the more good days we put together like that, the Saturdays will take care of themselves.
James, I was wondering, can I get your thoughts just on the defensive backfield going into spring? You moved Adrian to safety. And your thoughts on Jordan Lucas, the year maybe he had last year, what you see from him, and who else could be a factor at corner with Adrian moving to safety?
Yeah, I feel really good about, I didn't bring a depth chart in here, which I probably should have, but I feel really good about our defense and about our secondary in general. I really do. I think it's a little bit different on the defensive side of the ball compared to the offensive side of the ball, because those guys that are in the 2 deep on the D-line, those guys that are in 2 deep on the secondary, they played a lot. They played a lot. So I think if you look at our starting unit across the board, when I say starting unit, the guys that are going to be running out there for the first snap of team periods or 7-on-7s, I feel good about it. We've had a lot of guys that have played and been successful, and we're going to build on that. Where our issues come is depth. I also believe, though, in the secondary, if you're going to play some young guys, that's the position to do it. I think wide out, corner, things like that, you can get away with it. It's hard to have a freshman playing for you on the defensive line and on the offensive line. Amos, we think his natural position is safety. That's where we're going to play him. I think obviously he creates some flexibility, the fact that he could play corner as well in a pinch. But I like him back there at safety, being a leader for us, and Jordan Lucas gives us 2 really veteran guys at both levels in the secondary.
Coach, how would you use your 15 spring practices in terms of allotment? Will you practice 3 times a week, 2 times a week? And Coach Gall, when he talked 2 weeks ago, mentioned lifting during the spring practice. How does that work as well in terms of the scheduling of it?
Yeah, we'll go 2 days a week where we'll lift. Typically, you guys will see in the future, we will go Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays for spring ball. And the reason why is we really like to be able to practice on one day, the next day be able to watch the film, and then the next day for practice, just focus on that day without having to go back and watch the previous day's film. We're not going to be able to do that also with the amount of hours that we're allowed to have them during the week. I'd rather spread it out and go 3 days a week. We'll go basically 4 days a week. We'll go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. That's how the schedule was set. That affects how the guys scheduled their classes academically and things like that. So we basically are keeping the same schedule that was set before we got here. But in the future, it'll be a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, most likely schedule for spring ball. And then they'll lift 2 days a week. So they'll lift those other 2 days, Tuesdays and Thursdays.
James, do you feel like you're still catching up from the whirlwind of the last couple months? Or do you have your feet underneath you at this point? And also, have you had a chance to meet the new school president here?
Have not met the new school president. Really looking forward to doing that. As you can imagine, he's got a lot of things on his plate.
But really look forward to doing that, having a conversation with him whenever it's convenient for him. You know, when it comes to getting our feet on the ground, our feet have been on the ground since we arrived. The feet are moving fast and in a lot of different directions. But like I mentioned before, it'll be that way for the first 3 years. It really will. You know, universities are very complex places. They're very sophisticated. And, you know, being able to understand, I know how we want to run a program. We gotta figure out how do we run that program within the Penn State system and under the Penn State umbrella, so we can be successful and put a product on the field, off the field, in the classroom, in the community that everybody can be really proud of. But there's a lot of things that have to get figured out, and that's what I'm talking to as many people as I possibly can, asking as many questions as I possibly can, shaking as many hands, kissing as many babies as I possibly can, and you guys, I think, have seen that. The people in the community have been great. The administration has been unbelievable. Getting a chance to build relationships with the other coaches, I think, is important as well, to get to know them and kind of learn from them. I've had a lot of conversations with Kale. Love to go to the wrestling matches and sit there and not only watch the guys compete, but watch him. You know, he's an impressive guy. He really is, and he's built an impressive program. I want to become good friends with him, and I think he'd be a really good colleague. And probably more than anything, I want to keep him on my good side because I'm afraid he might pick me up and slam me. He's an impressive guy. You know, you look at what our volleyball program has been able to do. You look at soccer. I mean, you can go on and on. You know, basketball, women's basketball, and I've had a chance to kind of go and watch all those programs compete and watch the support they get. That's the thing that probably blows me away more than anything, is just the support that this university and these athletic programs get from this community. We want to build on that. You guys have heard me say before, we're going to sell out every single game next year. I believe that. And I'm going to keep pounding the table on that because we need to do that. We need to do that from a recruiting perspective. We need to do that from a financial perspective. And I truly believe once we get everybody pulling the rope in the same direction, that we could build something really special here.
James, can you talk about the adjustments that you guys as a staff have had to make coming into a roster that you guys didn't recruit for your schemes? You know, how much have you guys had to learn from that, and what kind of adjustments have you guys made as a staff?
Yeah, I don't think that's really significant. You know, in our opening press conference, we talked about that. You know, our schemes and the coaches that we've hired, we believe in flexibility and being able to play to your strengths, whatever those strengths are. If we came here and we had a dynamic dual threat quarterback, we'd be comfortable doing that. If we had a true drop back quarterback, we'd be comfortable doing that. The fact that we got a guy that I think can do both is exciting. Same thing on defense. If we came here and they were built for a 3-4 defense and we were a 4-3 team, we'd find a way to make it work from a 3-4 perspective for a couple of years until we recruited to what we wanted to do. So that hasn't really been an issue. The biggest issue for us as a coaching staff is I got a bunch of really good men and I got a bunch of really good family men, and most of us have been away from our families for a long period of time. You know, a lot of our families have stayed back to finish up school. You know, we've been staying in hotels, or you know, they're renting places where there's multiple coaches living there. This weekend is this week's been spring break for a lot of people, so a lot of the families are in right now. Herb Hand's family's here visiting for the first time. Bob Shoup's family's here visiting for the first time. So that's probably been the biggest adjustment. I think in some ways it's really good because we can stay in the office till 11 o'clock at night, calling recruits, evaluating tape, you know, talking X's and O's and schemes, because you got nobody to go home to. I mean, what are you going to do? Go back and look at the wall and that the residents in? You know, we get the kind of grind. So from a professional standpoint, I think it's really important. But from a personal standpoint, I really want to get these families here and these coaches settled as soon as we possibly can. So there's good and bad there.